お前はどこまで見えている。俺の死に様か。
The sun has recently disappeared below the horizon, and drinkers have migrated to their favorite bars in search of entertainment. In one of the shinobi bars, four young men were celebrating their recent promotion by indulging in one of the vices of both shinobi and civilians, alcohol. They sat around a rough wooden table, exchanging smiles and laughter. There were bottles of alcohol on the table, and all the friends had a fresh bottle nearby. They were all dressed in the same standard green bulletproof vests, and each of them had a bandage with the image of Konoha proudly on his head somewhere. The blonde man who was sitting closest to the window was holding a small glass with a potent liquid in his hand and close to his mouth. He also had many more small cups lined up at arm's length. He looked at the man directly across the table into his eyes. His blue eyes stared intently into the brown eyes of his opponent. The man returned the same gaze and spoke with a grin that revealed his prominent fangs. "Are you ready to lose, Naruto?" Kiba asked, twirling and examining the contents of his glass. They were about to start a drinking game between them. No one knew how it came to this, but no one wanted to stop their fun. "I've never lost a drinking game in my life, Kiba," Naruto replied smugly. "Naruto," Shikamaru intervened, lighting another cigarette. "This is your first time in a drinking game." Naruto cast a sidelong glance at Shikamaru, then grinned. "My statement still remains true," Naruto said, preparing his glass. Choji straightened up in his chair and raised a heavy hand to the sky. He looked at both opponents before shifting his gaze to the middle of the table and, "Go ahead," Choji said, lowering his arm in an arc. It made a whistling sound as it cut through the air on its way down. Naruto immediately stopped worrying. Without hesitation, the two rivals threw their heads back. The alcohol burned their throats. Simultaneously, their hands dropped the cups on the table with a loud clink. They both quickly grabbed the other one and continued to compete. Each time they glanced at each other. Eventually, both slowed down until they stopped. Both participants put their heads on the table, trying to settle their spinning world, exhausted by their activities. Their heads were turned to their respective collections of empty glasses and counted them. 21, 22, 23, they counted in unison. Their voices grew louder as the number increased. 27. "Get lost, Blondie," Kiba yelled triumphantly. Now Naruto propped his chin on his palm and looked at Kiba through an empty glass in his hand. He giggled at the strange effect and crossed his arms with a big smile on his face. 28, he gloated. Kiba groaned, lowered his arms to his sides, and hit his head on the table, muttering to himself. Naruto leaned back in his chair and raised both hands, making victory signs with his hands. He almost fell backwards, but his knees caught on the bottom of the table, and the chair was sent back on all four legs. "A reward? Are you serious?" Kiba asked, arching an eyebrow. When they originally created this game in their heads, no reward was discussed. "Yes," he stammered. "You won't get it," Kiba said, shaking his head. Naruto was disappointed. "What? No puppy? No money? No girls?" Naruto asked in a childish and mischievous way. He was just pushing the man to react. Kiba snorted and shook his head vigorously. "As if you're going to get a girl for a reward, much less get her at all," he joked, checking the inside pockets of his vest before pulling out his watch and wincing. "Yes? I bet I can meet a girl," he said, making wide sweeping gestures with his hands. It was a bold statement. "I doubt you could, but I have to go," Kiba said, getting up from his chair and stumbling towards the door. Naruto lowered his head again and stared at the many glasses. Shikamaru and Choji looked at each other before both nodded and stood up from their seats. They both decided that they had had enough of celebrating. Hey, Naruto, I've had enough of Shiki, Choji said, pointing his thumb at Shikamaru. His answer was a thumbs up from the blonde. Shikamaru put his hand on Choji's shoulder and spoke. I bet he'll be completely sober before sunrise, he said soothingly, pushing the door open with his back. He took one last look at Naruto before cheerfully shaking his head and walking out with his friend. Naruto's head was still lying on the table when he was playing with empty glasses. He was thinking about what Kiba had said when he was building a pyramid of glasses. What is Kiba talking about? Are you saying I can't find a girl? He whispered, knocking down the pyramid and listening with regret to the loud and numerous clink of glasses hitting the table and each other. The noise was enough for him to sit up straight and look around the building in embarrassment to see if anyone was looking at him for his violation. His gaze fell on the back of a slender female figure who was sitting alone on a bar stool. He was studying her when Kiba's words came back to him, and with a defiant smile, he decided to prove himself wrong. It took him a few seconds before he felt confident enough to move. I'm going to prove it to him, he thought as he swayed towards the bar, and tried to appear as sober as he could as he approached. Worry about what might go wrong entered his mind, but quickly disappeared due to the liquid courage that was in his system. He sat on the stool next to her and tried his best to act indifferent to her. He studied her, but could not see much, as her head was slightly lowered, and silky, long, black hair hid her face. However, he noticed a growing collection of glasses that were next to her. Okay, what should I say now? He thought about it, but his mouth had already made a decision. Hey, what brings you here? He asked and immediately mentally slapped himself. What an unconvincing phrase. He thought about it. He paled as her head slowly lifted and turned towards him. The lights at the front of the bar were much brighter than the ones that lit up his table, and her stunning face made his eyes squint even more. She had beautiful dark eyes and pale skin, and Naruto could have sworn he knew her. However, his intoxication prevented him from remembering the name. Her mouth moved, and Naruto focused on her lips. She moved them again, and Naruto realized that she was talking. Hi, she said. She has an incredibly pleasant voice, and answered with a face that turned red not only from alcohol. What brings you here? He paused. She smiled at him for some unknown reason and replied, I had a hard day today. What about you? What is it? She asked, incredibly friendly. Did she know him? My legs. He blurted out, pointing to his feet, and lifted them up a little. He looked at the woman as her previous tipsy giggle turned into laughter. It was loud enough to attract the attention of many other visitors. She quickly stopped laughing, and her voice lost most of its cheerful tone. I've actually been lonely for a while, so I came here to have a little drink, she said before looking at the glasses. Naruto's eyes quickly noticed the sadness in her eyes, and his compassion reached out to her. Do you want to talk about it? Naruto asked, and the woman seemed surprised. I have the whole night ahead of me. He said, and saw her eyes fill with what he thought was gratitude. She tapped on the table and held up 2 fingers. A pleasant joy returned to her voice, which Naruto was glad to hear. Bartender, 2 more drinks, please. She said happily when the man nodded. He pushed 2 glasses towards them, and Naruto looked at the woman waiting for an answer. Her eyes stared intently into his, and she handed him her glass in a toast. He smiled and clinked his glass against hers, and they both drank together. I think I'll regret this, he thought, feeling that he was getting weaker and weaker. This was Naruto's last conscious thought for a while. The rest of the night passed in a blur. However, the next morning was remembered with crystal clarity. Early morning sunlight filtered through the crack in the blinds and hit Naruto's closed eyes with extreme precision. The bright light warmed his sleeping face and made his eyes and nose wrinkle in an attempt to prevent the bright light from disturbing him. However, it didn't work, and Naruto woke up. Without opening his eyes, he turned his head away and tried to fall asleep again. The itching in his nose made itself felt and demanded his attention, so Naruto raised his hand to scratch it. He would have done it if his hand hadn't stopped. This immediately eliminated all the drowsiness that Naruto had experienced in his sleep, and now he woke up and his pulse quickened. His eyes remained closed, but his other senses were off the scale. He felt that the bed was definitely bigger and softer than his own. He also felt the warmth of someone else's skin intimately touching his own. He heard someone breathing steadily right next to him. He knew that his hand was under the man's head. Putting everything together, Naruto knew exactly what situation he was in. He was naked in bed with another man who was just as naked. The whole premise seemed like a scene straight out of one of Jiraiya's books, but Naruto didn't find anything funny about his situation. 3, 2, please, and 1. He opened his eyes wide and, seeing the stranger's face, instantly remembered his time in the bar. Her face was even more beautiful than when he first saw it, and it took him a few moments to get a good look at her. He noticed new features that had not been there before due to his intoxication, for example, that she was definitely older than him. Her age didn't detract from her beauty, it just made her look more regal. Her head rested calmly on his arm, and her black hair straggled in many directions. There was an expression of deep comfort on her face, and Naruto felt relaxed. A smile appeared on Naruto's face, and his anxiety when he first woke up was replaced by acceptance. He had never been in such a situation before, but he soon found that he liked it. Her right leg and arm rested on his body, and Naruto had never felt so comfortable before. This comfort was quickly destroyed when he heard a series of knocks on the door. His breath caught in his throat and he stared at the door in tense silence, before a muffled voice was heard. "I came back from my mission, Mom." Naruto was sure it was a man's voice, and he was stunned. Waking up with someone's mom stretched out on his body, and he didn't want to be caught. With care, he tore her limbs from his body and gently pulled his hand out from under her head. He was supporting her head so that the sudden change wouldn't wake her up. He tried his best to do all this without looking below her face, and by the end he covered her body up to her neck with a soft white blanket. He did everything as quietly as he could. After he moved away from her and got out of bed, he felt cold. His hand, which was under her head, began to tingle as the blood began to return to her, and he turned it to speed up the process. He studied the room around him as he did so, and was stunned by the numerous items of clothing that were randomly scattered around the room. He began to gather his clothes to cover himself and her clothes to stack neatly at the foot of the bed. His black shirt was the first thing he put on, and he kept looking for his boxers. He found his khaki cargo pants, headband, boots, and vest before he could find his boxers. He was sure he had worn them yesterday, but they were nowhere to be found. That was until he looked above the floor, and his eyebrows rose in incredulous surprise when he saw that they were spinning at the top, draped over one of the blades of the ceiling fan fixed above the bed. He stared at them, slowly spinning in confusion and slight amazement. He slowly returned to the bed and stood on it to reach the fan. He grabbed his boxers and deftly jumped off the bed before putting them on. He was halfway into his pants when he heard another knock on the door. The knock startled him and he stumbled. His fall resulted in a loud bang. He quickly recovered from the fall and was relieved to see that she was still asleep. Then he turned his head toward the door, fumbling with his pants. "Mom? Are you okay?" The voice outside the door sounded worried. "I'm coming in." Naruto watched in horror as the door handle turned, and he decided that now was the right time to leave. He concentrated in his mind with his eyes closed and found himself in his own house a millisecond before the door opened. He wiped his forehead with relief and thanked the power of the seals. Who knows what would have happened if someone had walked in and seen him. He finished putting on his pants before he leaned back on the sofa and looked up at the ceiling, letting out a sigh of relief, When his pulse finally calmed down, he decided to continue his day. He started making breakfast. He opened the refrigerator and took out a box of eggs along with milk. He put them on the table and turned on the stove, all the while whistling an optimistic, nameless song. When the eggs were ready, he put them on a piece of toast and poured milk into a glass. He ate his meal in cozy silence and then sat on the sofa practicing calligraphy. He had a whole day off thanks to his promotion, so he decided he needed to do something. He had been practicing for quite a long time before he heard a knock on the door. He got up from the sofa, went to the door, and opened it. A former team member was standing in the doorway. Naruto smiled. "Good morning, Sasuke," he said happily. The joy on Naruto's face and voice immediately alarmed Sasuke, and he answered the blonde in a tone that was not so happy. "Good morning," he said, and Naruto just nodded. "What brings you to my house?" "I wanted to congratulate you on your promotion," he explained. "Well, thank you. Congratulations on your promotion, too. It's a pity that you weren't in the village and you couldn't celebrate with me and the guys." "It was fun," Naruto said. Sasuke nodded in agreement before speaking. "I came not only to congratulate you, but also, Mom and I are going to celebrate my promotion at home, and I want to invite you." "I would love to." Naruto gave a thumbs up and grinned. The happiness that the blonde man radiated was beginning to frighten him. "What made you so happy, Naruto?" he asked. "Did he win the lottery?" "You could say that," Naruto said, scratching his head with his hand. "Well, it's not really an answer." Sasuke muttered something, but did not insist. "In any case, I need to pick up something for the holiday. Could you buy some groceries?" "Of course, just give me a list," Naruto said, and Sasuke quickly wrote down the products that Naruto should buy. Sasuke then left Naruto's apartment, and the blonde soon followed him. He locked the door behind him and headed to the market. He was wandering around the market, buying groceries from a list, when he found himself in front of a butcher. There was beef on the list, so he walked into the store and stared at the various types of meat that were hanging around him. He went to the counter and ordered what he needed. The butcher packed the meat in a bag and handed it to the blonde, wishing him a good day. Naruto turned around and headed back to the entrance when he noticed a familiar face. Kiba turned to him in surprise, but smiled when he saw who it was. Really? Kiba asked in surprise. "He doesn't look like a person who arranges holidays." "Yes, not really. I think Sasuke's mom is pushing him to do this." "Yes, it seems more likely than anything, but then again, I do not know his mother. She's more withdrawn than he is." "So, where are you going next?" They finally came out of the meat department. Naruto glanced at the list he took out of his pocket and read it quietly before putting it back in. "Do you know where the vegetable department is located?" "Yes, there is a grocery kiosk not far from here." "I'll show you," he said, pointing to the road. He and Kiba walked down a busy street, trying not to bump into any of the other visitors to the market. Now that they were out of the butcher's shop, Kiba could smell the smells, and he caught a pretty strong smell coming from the person he brought to the vegetable stall. It became so strong that Kiba couldn't ignore it anymore. "So, who is this lucky girl?" he asked awkwardly, but confidently. Naruto tensed and gave Kiba a confused look. "What do you mean? Did you sleep with a girl last night?" he declared. Naruto raised an eyebrow before agreeing with him. "Yes, most likely, most likely. You sure did some boxing, man." Naruto didn't dare deny Kiba's mastery of the sense of smell, but he sniffed the sleeve of his shirt to catch a scent that he could faintly catch. "Well, I had my suspicions," he said, putting his finger on his chin. "I just couldn't be sure." Kiba's mouth was wide open. He looked at the man with disbelief. "How could you not know if you had SHRX with someone?" he said loudly, waving his arms. Naruto, being especially attentive to how others behave around him, noticed the crowd of listeners, and decided to end the conversation. "We're almost there," he said unnaturally sternly. Kiba straightened up and stopped the conversation. "Cabbage for me, please," Naruto politely said. The seller handed him a cabbage, while he gave the man the appropriate amount of money. He thanked the man again before going to Sasuke's house, and Kiba did not lag behind. "So, Naruto, what's her name?" Kiba asked a question. Naruto turned and looked at him. "Me? I don't remember," he answered slowly. "Did you study with her and didn't even find out her name?" "You idiot. I didn't ask her name, and she, too," Naruto said defensively. "And what happened when you woke up together?" Naruto grinned awkwardly. "Well, I didn't stay long. I had to get out when her son knocked on her door." "Mother?" Kiba hit Naruto on the shoulder. The two friends kept walking, talking nonsense together. When they had just left the market, Naruto spoke up. "Okay, I'm off, bye, see you later," said Kiba, waving his hand and turning around. Naruto waved back and continued on his way. He decided to change his clothes before going to the Uchiha district. The gates to the Uchiha complex were a sight to behold. The object itself consisted of black metal rods spaced apart, but the arch crowning the gate was made of elaborately carved marble. In the center of the marble, at the highest point of the gate, the symbol of the Uchiha clan proudly flaunted. Naruto was sure that the gate was a source of pride for the clan. He pushed open the big gate and continued walking, holding a bag of groceries in his hand. The house was slightly larger than the others, as the clan head's family lived in it. It was also well maintained, with flowers. Naruto looked at the flowers after he knocked on the front door. He was always interested in gardening, but he never had time for it. The door opened shortly after he knocked, and he was greeted by a male Uchiha. He was dressed in casual clothes, in which Naruto almost never saw this man. Naruto was wearing a black turtleneck and pants of the same color, and dark sandals on his feet. "Glad to see you. For a second I thought you were lost," Sasuke said with a grin, opening the door wider for entry. Naruto grunted and took off his shoes. He looked at Sasuke and questioningly picked up the bag he was holding in his hands. Sasuke nodded before tilting his head to signal Naruto to follow him. The front door led into an open living room, and Sasuke led him further into the kitchen. Naruto looked around, impressed by the spacious size of the house. The living room was the size of his apartment, and the sofa in the shape of the letter L looked terribly attractive. His observation switched to the kitchen when Sasuke let him in. The appliances were in excellent condition, and white granite countertops covered every cabinet that stood on the floor. He wanted to run his fingers over the smooth stone. He walked over to the large dining table and put his groceries next to the ones Sasuke had bought. Sasuke took out his own purchases from the bag, and Naruto repeated after him. They threw out the bags, and Sasuke grabbed some vegetables and started cutting them. Naruto offered his help, but they only had one cutting board, so he sat down at the dining table. The house was quiet, only Sasuke's kitchen knife made a sound, hitting the wooden cutting board. Sasuke finished cutting the tomato and opened his free hand. Naruto took the bell pepper that was on the table and threw it to the black-haired man. "Where's Mikoto-san? Is he sleeping?" Naruto asked, trying to make a fuss in the room. "She was very tired this morning, so she stayed in bed longer than usual. It's been a rough night, she's had it," Naruto said absently. He was leaning forward. "Yes, she will come and help us now," Sasuke explained. "What are we even doing?" "My favorite dish," he said with a smile that is not often seen on his face. "And what is it? You'll see soon," he replied, removing all the cut pieces from the board into the pot. "I'm intrigued," Naruto noted. "I think you'll like it with dessert." "You're killing me with all this waiting." His ears caught the sound of the door handle turning, and he stopped cutting to look into the corridor. Naruto was still sitting at the dining table, but his attention was also focused on the hallway. When she finally came fully into view, Naruto choked on his own saliva, and it was only partly because of her beauty. "Good evening, boys." She said it in the sweetest way possible. Her hair was tied up in a high ponytail, and her face radiated happiness, and Naruto knew exactly who it was. How could he forget? He saw her this morning. "Hi, Mom," said Sasuke, and she nodded to him. "Gee, good afternoon, Mrs. Uchiha," Naruto faltered. The Uchiha woman turned her head to look at Naruto, and his pulse quickened. Naruto noticed that there were no signs of recognition on her face, but she still smiled warmly at him and nodded. "Please call me Mikoto." "And who are you?" She either forgot their whole night together, or pretended she'd never met him before. Naruto hoped she didn't know what had happened between them. "Naruto. It's nice to finally meet you, Mikoto," he said, holding out his hand. She took it and shook it. Naruto's pulse steadily decreased to a normal level as he began to calm down. "Ah, Naruto. Sasuke tells me more about you than about any other person. I'm glad to meet you too." Naruto wasn't sure how he should react to the comment. Did Sasuke talk about him with admiration or irritation? Besides, did he have any other friends to talk about? Questions raced through Uzumaki's mind as his gaze wandered over his former teammate. Uchiha looked annoyed as he shook his head, giving the impression that he was confused by his mother's words. "I had Sasuke with my mother," he thought with wide eyes. It seemed that the temperature in the room had dropped by several degrees. Sasuke noticed Naruto's expression and became worried. "What's wrong with your face, Naruto?" he asked. "I'm fine," he replied, raising his hands with open palms. He needed to distract attention from himself. "Let's get back to cooking," he offered and slammed his fist into the open palm. "I think I can take over the main dishes, and you will help me," the woman said, clasping her hands together. The trio worked well together to prepare a festive dinner. While they were cooking, they exchanged small talk and a couple of giggles. At this time, Naruto was still worried about whether Mikoto really remembered him. When dinner was ready, the three of them ate at the dining table before moving into the living room to drink some alcohol. The three of them settled comfortably on the sofa. This time, when they drank, Naruto didn't make a mistake and drank some glasses. He really enjoyed spending time in their company, but all good things come to an end. "Well, thank you for inviting me, but I have to go," he said, getting up from the soft sofa cushion. As he was heading for the exit, a loud clap of thunder shook the house. He opened the front door slightly to check the weather, and the rain, almost falling sideways, soaked the carpet at the entrance to the house. He quickly tried to close it and felt a strong wind struggling with his efforts, blowing on the door. When he won the fight, he returned to the two Uchiha. He looked at the two family members with bewilderment. "It's really pouring out of buckets." Naruto calmly jerked his thumb towards the door. "Why don't you stay here tonight? The storm is expected to last until early morning," Mother suggested. Naruto was grateful for the offer, but tried to refuse it. "I'll be fine, really. I can use the seals too." Mikoto didn't hear that and interrupted him. "Nonsense, we both enjoyed spending time with you, and we have enough space. We'd love it if you stayed the night." "Right, son?" she said, looking at the other Uchiha. "I think he'll be fine in the rain. Idiots don't catch colds anyway." He stopped when a hand hit him on the back of the head. "We have a guest bedroom." Naruto smiled and weighed the woman's offer in his mind. In fact, Naruto could have just teleported back to his house like he did that morning, but after witnessing Mikoto's adamancy in his desire to stay, he didn't think he had a real choice in the matter. "Well, if I'm not interrupting, I think I'm inclined to accept your offer," he said. Mikoto wasn't going to use it in this weather. "Sasuke, could you show him the guest bedroom, please?" she said, collecting glasses in the living room and putting them in the sink. "Of course," he said, signaling Naruto to follow him. They went further into the house, where Sasuke pointed to the door on the right. "This is the bathroom," he explained and switched hands to point to the door on the left. "This is a guest room, okay," Naruto said. Sasuke walked to the door to his room before turning back to Naruto. "I would show you how the shower works, but tomorrow morning I have a task waiting for me." "I know how the shower works, you idiot, HN. Good night," Uchiha said before disappearing through his bedroom door. When he entered, he noticed how the room was oriented. In the far corner of the room there was a single bed, and at arm's length there was a wooden bedside table. He was wearing a watch and a lamp. There was an empty table in the right corner, closest to him. There was a closet along one of the walls, but he didn't bother to open it, he didn't need it. In general, the room was empty, but comfortable, and it was different from Naruto's cramped, busy apartment. However, he did not sleep all night, as the need for a drink brought him to consciousness. His throat was dry, and a glass of water seemed incredibly refreshing to him. He got out of bed and went to the door, where he slowly turned the handle so as not to make noise. He walked just as slowly without making a sound. He wasn't familiar enough with the house to know where everything was stored, so it was difficult for him to find a glass. In the end, he found and took care to lift the folded glass straight so that it wouldn't clink against any other glass. He lowered the faucet handle back down and brought the cup to his mouth. The water was as refreshing as he thought it would be, and he wiped his face before sighing contentedly. He was proud of himself for being so quiet, but pride quickly turned to fear when the lights suddenly flashed. He was blinded and felt like a caught criminal. He squinted with his eyes and saw Mikoto in a nightgown. One of her hands rested on the kitchen wall, and the other rested on her hip. "Mikoto? I'm sorry if I woke you up. I tried to be as quiet as possible." "It's all right, Naruto," she said. Naruto noticed that her voice sounded different, and he was a little nervous about it. "Oh, so I didn't wake you up? Nice to hear." "I tried my best to be quiet," he said, trying to explain himself. The woman slowly approached Naruto, and when she was only a few feet away, she pointed to her knees. Naruto silently followed her hands and found himself looking at her long, white legs. For a moment he was confused, but then two quiet words cut through the silence in the room. "My legs," Mikoto whispered, smiling slyly. Naruto's breath caught abruptly when he heard these two quiet words. Mikoto stood on her toes before stopping a few inches from his face. She looked into his eyes in a way that made Naruto feel like a cornered mouse. "Why you, remember?" he asked in horror. She put her finger under his chin. "It's hard to forget such strong words," she joked, and Naruto blushed. He looked confusedly at the tiled floor, hoping that by averting his eyes, the situation would be resolved. He could still see her legs, and he knew that his actions were useless. He abruptly turned around and looked at the grinning woman before speaking. "The night before. This shouldn't have happened." Naruto saw Mikoto's expression change immediately, and she was saddened by his words. Her confident smile sagged until it turned into trembling lips. She lowered her head and played with her fingers while talking to him. Obviously, his words were not what she expected him to say, and she surveyed her surroundings before speaking in a defeated voice. I know this shouldn't have happened. I was totally drunk, and so were you. I was in trouble, and you came and offered your help. I was so lonely, and when you came up and pretended to care about me, I couldn't let you go. I used you to feel that I have someone." She turned away dejectedly, and Naruto tried to take some pressure off her. He felt just as guilty. "I came there of my own free will, and I also stayed there of my own free will. Alcohol may have affected me, but don't think for a second that you forced me to do something. I'm also to blame. In fact, I'm worse than you." His words didn't seem to have much effect on changing the woman's deteriorating mood. "That's all I wanted." She started crying. Naruto tensed from the awkwardness in the room. He was not used to such emotions. He stared wide-eyed as she exhaled. My husband left me, all my friends left, and Sasuke goes on assignments 24/7, so I rarely see him. I am always alone in this huge house, and it becomes so unbearable. Naruto hesitantly put his hand on her shoulder in an attempt to calm her down. He wasn't sure what to do. Comforting crying women wasn't his strong suit. All that night I was thrilled that there was someone I could be with whom I could spend time. But when I woke up and saw that you weren't there, I had to see you again, so I made Sasuke invite you to our party. Also that I could be alone with you and tell you how wonderful it was to be with you last night, and ask you. She paused. Tell me, said Naruto. If there was anything he could do to help, he was willing to do it. Mikoto turned her head to turn away from Naruto, and her eyes were looking out the living room window. She couldn't see anything through him, only the darkness, but it saved her from having to look at the blonde man's face. His reflection was just as hard to look at. She paused briefly before plucking up the courage to face Naruto. If you would, you could continue to spend time with me. She saw the bewilderment on Naruto's face, and hurried to clarify the situation. It doesn't have to be a SHRX. It just happened. I just can't be alone anymore, she said with a flushed face. The emotions conveyed by her words and face filled Naruto with sympathy, and he found that he wanted to help the woman, as he had done last night. I can't refuse to help someone who needs it. I'd love to keep you company, he said, and the woman immediately hugged him. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, she exclaimed. Joy and gratitude filled her heart, and a radiant smile lit up her face. Naruto was crushed by the woman's embrace. It was a different but calming feeling. Please. Now let's go to bed, he said, heading to the guest room. Mikoto was still on top of him, and when he entered the room, instead of leaving, she climbed into bed before he could get a word in. Naruto was about to object, but when he saw her face again, he sighed. He promised that he would keep her company, and he does not renege on his promises. He had to make her feel that she wasn't alone. Unlike the last time Naruto woke up with a woman, he didn't panic. Long black strands of hair tickled his nose with every breath, and the warm cheek on his right breast pressed soothingly on his chest. He took his free hand and ran his fingers through his hair, and looked at the only window in his room that did a good job of protecting from sunlight. He could hear the soft murmur of chirping birds. The whole atmosphere was so serene that this morning was one of the most peaceful. It feels so good, he whispered to himself. It was the second time he had woken up with another person, and it was nice. Surprisingly, the man did not feel uncomfortable because a beautiful woman was lying peacefully on him. Me too, Mikoto replied, startling Naruto. She stretched her arms up and arched her back, yawning at the same time. Her yawning also made Naruto do the same. He brought his fist to his face to cover his wide-open mouth. Good morning, he said with a smile in his eyes. Good morning, she tilted her head to him and looked into his eyes with an infectious smile. Her eyes told him how much she appreciated his actions. Did you sleep well? Yes, she replied with a smile. I'm glad, he said sincerely. Helping people always made him feel amazing. This was no exception, and his heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. He glanced at the clock next to them. Naruto's mouth turned into a crooked grimace. Mikoto, seeing his expression, also looked at her watch and pouted. Are you busy today? That must have ruined his mood. Yes, he said, sitting down, forcing Mikoto to sit down too. My vacation ended last night. And it's time for me to go on missions. This is very bad. Her figure was wrapped in soft sheets, and there was a contented expression on her face. I wouldn't mind lying around either, but I don't want to lose the promotion I just got. I'm going to make us some tea. Mikoto slid off the bed and pulled off all the sheets. They slipped away from Naruto, and with them their warmth. Feeling the air chill his bare legs, Naruto realized that he was still in the clothes in which he went to bed. It was just his boxers. Looking at his underwear, he realized he quickly covered himself with a pillow, attracting the woman's attention. She raised one eyebrow, and he began to explain me. I don't want to be disrespectful in front of a woman, he said and scratched his cheek. Mikoto grinned. It looks like your current outfit didn't affect your actions in the kitchen last night. Blue eyes widened with realization. There's nothing to be ashamed of, I've already seen you without them. Don't be shy, the way she said it made his cheeks burn even more. He was sure he was shining. The woman watched as the blushing man fidgeted before turning the door handle. She was about to go out into the hallway when Naruto spoke. What about Sasuke? Naruto asked. Mikoto's hand, which was on the door handle, fell limply. She cast a sidelong glance at the blonde man. He left a few hours ago, as he always does. He always leaves before sunrise, she said sadly, looking into the distance. Naruto's eyebrows lifted in mild surprise. He knew Sasuke always went on missions, but this level of dedication was something else. He decided then and there to try to convince Sasuke to spend more time with his mother. He shouldn't have been the only one helping his new girlfriend cope with her loneliness. Mikoto opened the door completely, went out and headed to the kitchen. Naruto soon followed her, quickly pulling on his clothes. The woman was rummaging through the cupboards when he got to the kitchen and offered the blonde a place at the dining table. He sat down and watched the woman as she started making tea. She put the kettle on the gas stove. Mikoto placed 2 cups on the table and filled them with steaming liquid. Naruto thanked him and they drank together. So, now that you've been promoted, will you be getting a lot of missions? The mug she was clutching warmed her hand. Naruto took a sip from his. I'm not sure how often I will receive, but the workload should be quite large. I will be absent from the village more often than ever, he replied. He saw her head drop slightly and realized that what he said wasn't what she wanted to hear. But don't worry, I'll make sure to spend as much time with you as you want. Thank you, Naruto. But I know that you won't always be able to communicate with me. I think I can cope with loneliness if I know that you will come back. Naruto smiled encouragingly, stood up and held out his hand to Mikoto. He stretched out on the table, confidently looking into her eyes. Mikoto, I promise that whenever you get lonely, I will come and spend some time with you. And I'm not going back on my promises. The woman looked at the man with awe before taking his hand and shaking it. Thank you, she said gratefully. Naruto smiled broadly, giving a thumbs up. Thanks for the tea, Mikoto. I'd like to spend more time with you, but duty calls. I will definitely come by when I can. He said happily, come back soon. She said with the same enthusiasm. Naruto was escorted to the front door and said goodbye before leaving the Uchiha house. He raised his hand in the air to wave to the hostess. Mikoto watched as the guy walked and then ran out of her mansion. This man is something else, she said, leaning her whole body against the door frame. The village gate was a sight that was all too familiar to Naruto, but it still gave him a warm feeling in his heart when he looked at the strong and protective barrier after returning from a mission. It was the first landmark, apart from the dense forests around him, which personified his proximity to home. His pace accelerated when he saw the massive gate. Now, instead of walking briskly, he was running towards the gate with a smile on his face. He slowed down to greet the gatekeepers warmly, who were more than happy to see him, and then headed towards the Hokage Tower. When he got to the entrance to the tower and opened the main door, he was surprised and glad to see Sasuke talking to the administrator. He, like Naruto, had just returned from a mission and warned the lady at the table that he had plans to meet with Hokage. Naruto guessed that any words that Sasuke said passed right over the young secretary's head, because all she did during the conversation was nod, blush and look at Uchiha. Naruto, no matter how distracted he was, could easily notice that the young woman was excited about being so close to a man. After Sasuke finished everything, he went to the Hokage. Naruto hurriedly approached the table, as he wanted to catch up with Sasuke, and spoke to the lady. "I have returned from my mission. See you later." He said it so quickly that the girl barely had time to notice that a new person had arrived. She looked where he was going and tried to stop him by meekly raising her hand. "Hey, wait. Naruto, Hokage is busy right now," she said with surprise still sounding in her voice. Naruto, who already had the door to the stairs half open, seemed to weigh her words in his head for a moment before speaking. As if she cares. With these words, he entered the stairs, leaving the puzzled secretary staring at where he once was. "So, what do you think of Shiho?" he asked. "Who?" "For a so-called child prodigy, of course, he can sometimes be stupid." Shiho. The secretary Naruto was confused by the fact that Sasuke didn't know the girl's name. She had been working as a receptionist for the Hokage for some time, and she was quite talkative and friendly. Naruto had talked to her for quite a long time before, which allowed him to get to know her well. He was surprised that Sasuke didn't even know her name. "Is that her name?" His answer annoyed Naruto, but he decided not to pay attention to it. "Anyway, what do you think of her?" "She is. It's kind of weird." She was just concerned, but that's not what I'm asking. "She's pretty cute, don't you think?" He elbowed Sasuke in the side to try to get a reaction. Uchiha put his hand where he was hit and looked at his former teammate with narrowed eyes. "Why are you asking me this? I'm just curious." "Are you trying to play matchmaker for me?" he asked incredulously. "Not. I'm just trying to open your eyes a little. I don't need your help to find someone, Naruto. Besides, she's not my type." Now it's Naruto's turn to doubt his friend's words. "Why?" "She definitely likes you, and she is a very good person. She's a civilian, and we can't be together." Naruto slapped his forehead, as if he remembered something important. "Oh yes," he began, "I forgot that you like muscular girls with chest hair and a tube between their legs." Sasuke was clearly offended. "Well, why don't you start dating her yourself? If she is so good." Naruto examined his head in search of an answer, but could not find an answer. Shiho was a nice girl and also pretty, but he had no desire to have a romantic relationship with her. "Let's close this topic," he replied, smiling stupidly. Sasuke accepted the answer, probably because he didn't want to continue the conversation on the current topic. Naruto took the handle and turned it, and they both went inside and greeted their leader. "Grandma, Lady Hokage." Sasuke, she nodded to him, then looked at the blonde brat. "Another successful mission, Grandma." "My mission was also crowned with success." "Glad to hear it, boys. I would like to receive a report from each of you when you have the opportunity." "Sasuke, I take it you want another mission?" "If possible, Lady Hokage. I have a mission for you." Here she opened the drawer and grabbed the scroll inside. She tossed it to Sasuke, who put it in his breast pocket and thanked him before leaving. Naruto watched him leave and whistled in surprise. "Does he never take a day off?" Naruto asked Tsunade. "The only days when he takes days off are the ones that I make mandatory. He has a great work ethic, but with the tenacity with which he undertakes missions, he will drive himself into the ground." "Yes, he's always away from home. Mikoto told me that he usually leaves before sunrise." Tsunade's eyes widened in surprise. "Did you talk to Mikoto?" Yeah. Sasuke recently invited me to his house, and I had the opportunity to get to know her." "Why are you surprised?" "Mikoto was a kind of recluse after the massacre and her husband's departure. I'm probably the one who has spent the most time with her since then, but even my time is limited being a Hokage. Before I met her, I didn't even know what she looked like. It's pretty sad. She used to be so sociable and happy. And she was very different from the other Uchiha." Tsunade had a distant and melancholic look, as if she was remembering good days. I'm sure she'll cheer up soon. Everyone has their dark days, but the sun rises for everyone. In any case, are there any tasks for me? No. There are none at the moment. I'll definitely call you when someone shows up. Okay, sounds good. See you then, Grandma, he said, and then went to open the door. Have a nice day, Naruto, said Tsunade. He opened the door and was leaving when he said that. He quietly closed the door and went back down the stairs. As he descended the stairs, he was met with a situation similar to the one he had seen when he first entered the tower. Sasuke was talking to Shiho again, only this time he was actually talking to her, not just telling her. Naruto smiled, thinking that his words had reached the stubborn Uchiha. When Sasuke looked back and saw Naruto standing at the foot of the stairs, he abruptly ended the conversation with the girl. When Naruto came up to him and put his hand on his shoulder, he had a Cheshire smile until they left the tower. So it's still not your type, Sasuke? She is. He searched his mind for the words, she's cute, what does that mean? Don't be stupid, you idiot. She's cute, okay, I'll see you when you get back from your mission. Naruto patted his friend on the back. See you later. Sasuke lazily waved his hand, and they went their separate ways. Naruto, not wanting to walk in his sand gear, decided to teleport directly to his home to clean himself up. He went into the bathroom and began to unfold the fabric that clung tightly to his clothes. There was even more sand in his shoes, and when he turned them upside down, a long, continuous stream flowed to the floor. Building a damn sand castle in my bathroom. It was necessary to do it outside. When he finished taking off all his clothes covered with sand, he looked with annoyance at the big pile on the floor, and then, with a quick movement of his hand, he used the wind chakra to lift the sand and carry it out through the small window in his bathroom. After it was over, he jumped into the shower and washed himself off, washing away all the sand that was still on his body. By the time he finished taking a shower, dried off and dressed, he had already figured out what he would do with Mikoto. With this idea, which was spinning in his head, he went to the Uchiha district, where his new friend was waiting for his return. Uchiha's neighborhood was no less sinister than the first time he visited. At least the unoccupied buildings have not become more attractive. On the other hand, the house where the last remaining Uchiha lived was a well-kept beacon of light in a gloomy neighborhood. Naruto almost felt the warmth of the house when his fist hit the front door. A moment later, the door opened and a smiling woman appeared on the threshold. Hi, Mikoto, is Sasuke here? He didn't want his friend to know that he was walking with his mom. He left about 15 minutes ago. It's just you and me. Great. Can I come in? I have something to talk about. Mikoto stepped back, stepped out of the doorway, and motioned for him to enter. He came in and they were sitting on the couch. The woman stared intently at Naruto, waiting for him to speak. She had no idea what he was going to say, so she didn't want to miss a word. The enthusiasm she showed with her eyes alone slightly unnerved the man, and an awkward period of time passed between the time he was sitting on the couch and when he started talking. He tried to formulate the monologue in his head to be as clear as possible. After he did that, he talked to her. I'm free until the end of today, but as I said, there will be days, even weeks, when I won't be around to spend time with you. I have an idea. On the days when I'm free, we can go out together. What types of activities? Actually, all kinds. It would be interesting to experience something new, to do unique things. All in order to enjoy life enough to make us happy. What do you say? Sounds great, but are we limited to doing everything in private? I don't like the attention I get in crowded places at all, and it would be very suspicious if we were seen walking together. Especially if the news gets to Sasuke. You're right. I didn't think about it. He thought about it before the idea came to him. Why don't we just use transformational jutsu to disguise ourselves? I think it might work. Now that we don't have to worry about what you have planned for tonight? I thought I could take you to the movies. and after that we could have something to eat. Well, how? It didn't take her long to answer. I haven't been to the cinema for a long time. I agree, great. He got up from the sofa and held out his hand to help her up. Not so fast, mister, she said, amused by his enthusiasm. We still need to reincarnate in our disguises, that's right. I almost forgot. He laced his fingers together to form the correct hand gesture, and Mikoto repeated after him. Together, they both finished their techniques and created a decent column of smoke that engulfed both of their forms. The white smokescreen soon dissipated into thin shreds, and then completely disappeared, revealing two new, completely unrecognizable people. Each person looked at the other, assessing the effectiveness of their technique. Naruto had lost his mustache marks, looked middle-aged, and had brown hair and eyes. Mikoto's transformation was the same disguise as Naruto's. Her distinct black hair has been replaced with long light brown strands, and her pale skin has darkened by several shades. Her age remained the same, but she looked completely different from what she really was. They both wore civilian clothes so as not to attract attention to themselves. You look good, you too. Shall we go? He nodded and offered the woman his hand. She wrapped her arm around him, and they left the house and began their night in the city. Their tour to the cinema went as smoothly as possible. The disguise worked flawlessly, and no one in the theater paid any attention to the couple. They were surprised and internally breathed a sigh of relief when they saw how few viewers would actually watch the film with them. Even though Mikoto was sure that people wouldn't bother them, no matter how many there were, she still felt more comfortable with fewer people. They were sitting at the back of the room, where the density of people was the lowest. Both were glad that they had the opportunity to sit almost wherever they wanted. Mikoto liked the privacy with Naruto. They both liked the movie so much that they stayed to watch the subtitles, but Naruto's comedic commentary made it even more enjoyable. He made fun of the movie whenever he could. After they left the theater, the two headed to the restaurant. They ate there quietly, talking only to each other, until they thanked each other and went to Mikoto's house. Their walk back was pleasant. The moon and periodic street lights illuminated their path, and passers-by must have caught their good mood, as everyone on a late-night walk graciously greeted them. The occasional street lamp soon ceased to exist as they approached Uchiha territory, and now the only thing giving them light was that big rock in the sky. Naruto was nervous walking around the Uchiha settlement alone in the daytime, and he was sure that if he was alone now, he would be shaking. The fact that Mikoto accompanied him through the deserted settlement made him feel at ease. It seemed to him that a ghost town was scarier than real ghosts. Their night together was supposed to end, like all nights, and Naruto was standing at Mikoto's house again, and the same person was standing on the threshold. His hand rested on the door, closest to the porch light. How do you think tonight went? He asked. I had a great time. It was nice to finally go somewhere other than the bar. I'm glad. I had fun too. How about next time? Just go to other places already. I'd love to. Thanks for the evening, Mikoto. I should be thanking you. Without you, I would be sitting at home alone. Mikoto smiled broadly and stood on her toes and approached Naruto's face. Naruto, seeing this, also bent down. She gave him a quick peck on the cheek, which the blonde did not expect. He shuddered slightly, and a hand touched his cheek. I hope it will be even better next time. Good night, Naruto, she said with a chuckle. Good night, Mikoto, Naruto said excitedly. The door slowly closed, and Naruto stared at the door, still feeling his cheek with his hand. Until next time, he said cheerfully. He turned around 180 degrees on one leg and was about to start his return journey, but after seeing the ominous darkness that was waiting for him, he decided to use teleportation instead. Mikoto and Naruto's first date was such a stunning success that soon they went to the second, and then to the third. Weeks passed and they spent time with each other at least once a week. They continued to walk around the village, reliving life and creating memories that both will remember with love. They met together when Sasuke was absent from the village and Naruto was not on a mission. They felt comfortable in their fake characters and played the roles of a loving couple as well as the highest paid actors. Tonight was supposed to be another one of their nights together, but it wasn't going to be ordinary. Mikoto's birthday was coming up soon, and he wanted to surprise her with something extravagant and special. Naruto was going to take her to one of the best restaurants in Konoha, and she didn't know anything about it. He hoped she would like it. In fact, he hoped they would both like it. He's never been to a place as expensive as this. He was walking towards their meeting place, the transformation already hiding his true identity. His clothes were not ordinary. It was official. A black tuxedo with an equally black tie choking his neck was what he was wearing. He also stood out like a sore thumb in the place he was in, which was a simple grocery store on the outskirts of the market district. She was glad to see him, but it was obvious that she was confused by his outfit. Mikoto hugged him and asked him what kind of costume it was. "It's for where we're going tonight. This is one of those 5-star places in an affluent neighborhood." "Really?" she asked, surprised at the prospect that they would go to such an institution. "And what exactly is the name of that place?" "The restaurant's name is too long and complicated, but I know what the facade of the building looks like." "What about my outfit?" The simple civilian clothes, which were the main element of her disguise, were replaced by a black dress without shoulders, ending below the knees. And on his feet were black shoes. "You look beautiful, perfect for where we're going." "Thanks. I haven't worn this dress for a long time." Having said that, she looked at herself and nodded. "Well, if you looked as good as you do now, you must have had problems with all the men who wanted to meet you." He smiled. "Not really, I did a good job scaring them away." "God, I have to do the same tonight." He gently took Mikoto's hand in his. "We have the whole night ahead of us. Let's make the most of this night," she said. The two then went to the restaurant, catching the eyes of many people, both men and women, as they passed by. They didn't pay attention to the watching eyes, they were too busy talking among themselves. Their conversation continued throughout their walk, which seemed fast to them. "That's it," Naruto said as they approached the glass door. He opened it and held it for Mikoto, and then slowly closed it, making sure he didn't slam it shut. He really didn't want to pay for the broken door. He walked behind her for a few steps before closing the distance and meeting with a staff member working at the front desk. "Good evening. I booked a table for the evening." In the morning, the man put on ridiculously small round glasses and flipped through a couple of pages of the newspaper on his counter. His thick finger tapped on a certain section of the sheet, and he smiled. "Come with me." He led them. Then they sat down at a table that was separated from the rest by a carefully trimmed bush. "I'll be back soon with the menu." With these words, the man left them alone. "What kind of name is Narumi?" "I combined our names. I know it's not original, but I didn't have much time to come up with a last name when booking. Better than what I would have come up with." "Have you ever been here before?" "No, but I've been to similar places. However, this one made the greatest impression on me." "Are you sure you don't mind spending that much?" "I would pay more if it makes you happy." Mikoto blushed. "At this rate, you will be left without money," she said with a smile. Naruto felt her foot touch his legs. The cheerful waiter returned to their table and put 2 menus. "Here are your menus. Any questions?" The man and the woman shook their heads negatively and began to choose dishes. "I think everything has a beginning." Naruto raised his cup. "Hooray!" Mikoto clinked her cup with Naruto's cup. Except that it didn't make a ringing sound, more like the sound of cheap plastic bending. They looked into each other's eyes while drinking. Black meets blue in the soft moonlight. Naruto looked around her face and was amazed by her beauty. It was the first time he had seen her without disguise during one of their walks, and he studied her perfect features with awe. His hand went up to brush the stray hair from her face, and somehow he found his hand cupping her cheek. Her brow lifted in surprise. "You are incredibly beautiful." Naruto instantly felt the inside of his palm warm up, and he felt his own face turn red. The alcohol gave him a little more confidence than usual. Mikoto's face was buried in his hand. "You're very handsome for your age," Mikoto replied. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly, and he imperceptibly leaned closer to her already close face. Looking at her, his mind replayed all the memories they had shared over the past half a year. They had incredible fun together, and Naruto could say with confidence that he was looking forward to their every meeting with frenzied excitement. Mikoto was a wonderful woman. "You know," he began, forcing the woman to concentrate, "I really liked all these walks that we spent together. You're such an amazing person to be around, and I can't wait to get back from missions and see you again. I've had some great moments with you and me. I can't wait to experience a little more." His hand fell from her face down into the space under their two bodies, onto Mikoto's warm hand. He squeezed it lightly before the raven-haired beauty made a "come closer" sign with her free hand. He bent down and gave her his full attention. "Why wait?" she asked shyly. Naruto didn't have time to ponder the meaning of her words before she took his mouth with hers. Naruto leaned towards her, and soon they were both intensely exploring each other's mouths. Their tongues intertwined as Mikoto ran her palm over his hair and face. Naruto kept one hand firmly planted on the ground, while the other stroked the outside of her leg. They remained in this position until their lungs could no longer cope with the lack of air. The two heads reluctantly moved away from each other, and an inverted arc of saliva stretched between their mouths. Their bodies trembled as if they were shaken by every sharp breath. Their swollen lips throbbed as they stared at each other endlessly. The way Mikoto's pitch-black eyes looked at Naruto made him want to dive back in. He would have done so, but a light breeze blew between them, and Naruto felt a chill in his chest. He realized that his jacket was unbuttoned and that his mesh shirt was open. He gave Mikoto a hungry smile that came back to him. "Let's get out of here." Now they were in Naruto's living room, but the change of scenery did not slow down their session in any way. Their new position now forced the two to snuggle tightly together, and in their lust they moved their hips towards each other. Naruto's erection rested against the denim fabric of Mikoto's jeans. Both groaned from the sudden stimulation. They continued to kiss and rub until Mikoto broke the contact between their lips to rip off Naruto's mesh shirt. She sat up straight and threw him aside, and before he fell to the ground, Naruto started pulling the bottom button of Mikoto's blouse. Irritated, he instead grabbed one side of each shirt with his hands and unbuttoned the shirt, causing all the buttons to come off their seams. It was an incredibly sexy look from Naruto, whose eyes were fascinated by the movements of her breasts. He watched her movements with close attention. She suddenly stopped, and Naruto quickly but anxiously looked into her eyes. There was not a shadow of regret in her eyes, and when their gazes met, the black-haired beauty spoke and raised herself from him just a few inches. "I need you right now," she said softly, but for Naruto the demand was confident and strong. Naruto swallowed, fascinated by the seductive woman on him right now. "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time," she said, fiddling with his belt buckle. "And here." "I understand," Naruto continued. He pulled them down as far as he could without having to remove the Uchiha from him. His boxers didn't hide his massive erection well. Their kiss was interrupted, and a beautiful woman over Naruto collapsed on his chest. Her head landed right on his collarbone. She sighed contentedly as her body calmed down. They lay together in silence for a while, which neither of them could understand. Each was completely delighted with the other. Mikoto was lying with her eyes closed, her head bobbing up and down with every inhale and exhale. The blonde was looking at the ceiling, enjoying the warmth he could outline on his body. He began to rub his hand on her lower back, but he did it absent-mindedly and infrequently. Two exhausted lovers were walking away from the bliss they had just experienced. Eventually, Naruto's eyes closed too, and soon both fell into a deep sleep. The blue eyes slowly opened to enjoy the soft yellow light that illuminated the room. His head was lying on the sofa cushion, and the first thing his clear eyes focused on was the ceiling fan. His two light bulbs were still burning brightly. He forgot to turn them off before he fell asleep. Or rather, he was too busy with the woman who was now resting on him. Speaking of a woman, when Naruto looked at her sleeping figure, his heart skipped a beat and warmed up. All he could see was the top of her head and the hair that snaked out of her. He never thought that he would come to this with her again. It wasn't his original intention, but after months with her, he realized what he wanted. He had been biding his time for the last few weeks, trying to muster up the courage to really try his luck. This courage reached a boiling point last night, and with the help of wine, Naruto opened his heart to Mikoto. Her reaction was completely unexpected, but he was thrilled that it happened. He had a woman on his chest, with whom he fell in love, after an energetic lovemaking. What could be better? He smiled broadly and then kissed the top of her head. The action made her move, and when she raised her head to look at his face. "Hello, beautiful," he said with a light but infectious smile. Mikoto, still sleepy, moved closer to him, tilting her head forward to join them in a kiss. It was a short kiss filled with a lot of emotions. When she raised her head, there was the same smile on her face. "Hello, did you sleep well?" Mikoto paused to think about how she felt. A finger idly tapped her lips. "It seems to me we didn't sleep for long." Naruto nodded. His eyes were warm and heavy, they stayed closed longer than usual when he blinked. "Yes, I feel the same way." "Let me check." Blondie sat down, forcing the Uchiha on his torso to move to one side of the sofa to allow him to get out from under her. He turned his body to put both feet on the floor. His bare feet sank into the soft thick carpet. He got up from the sofa and took one step towards the kitchen before his surroundings became a blur. He stretched out his arms to cushion the fall, and fortunately it worked. He heard Mikoto giggle softly. He looked back at her and saw that her finger was pointing at his feet. Looking at them, he saw that they were tangled in jeans around his ankles. "I always forget," he said, getting to his feet. He pulled up his pants and covered himself in one smooth motion. Having finished with this fiasco, he continued his way to the kitchen, where he looked at the time displayed on the microwave. This device was the only one in his house that showed the time, except for his alarm clock, which was in his bedroom. After reading the digital clock, he grunted in surprise. "It's 3 o'clock in the morning," he said, returning to the sofa. As he was walking there, he examined his window and the lack of light coming from it. This was confirmed by his kitchen clock. Then he turned his head, saw that Mikoto was sitting, and again appreciated her appearance. The blouse he tore didn't cover anything well, and he noticed the wet spot on her jeans again. Her dark locks were twisted, folded, and stood on end. "Mikoto, how about we tidy up our clothes and ourselves before we go back to bed? And this time we can be in a real bed." She stretched, raising her arms high. Mikoto was helped off the sofa and led across the room. Naruto stopped next to a wooden door, opened it and pointed to the shower inside. The woman entered the doorway, and the man stuck his head in. When she turned around, there was a glint in her eyes. "Would you like to join me?" she asked. Naruto chuckled briefly, but shook his head. "As much as I'd like to, I need to do the laundry." "Good," she chuckled. Mikoto entered the shower, a startled scream escaped from the shower, and Naruto grinned again. "The water does not heat up immediately here." "I'm sorry, I should have warned you." He headed back to the main room, still holding a stack of clothes in his hands. There was no room for a washing machine in Naruto's apartment, but the complex had a laundry room on the ground floor. The blonde doubted that anyone would be there at 3 in the morning. He went down the outside stairs, feeling the cool night air on his naked torso. When he got to the laundry room door, he turned the handle and was relieved to find it unlocked. He went to the first washing machine and threw the clothes into it. He looked around the room to see if there was anyone else. Seeing no one, he quickly took off his pants and also threw them. Detergent was splashed inside, and the door closed with a satisfying click. Naruto lazily stared at the washing machine for a moment, but decided that he had more important things to do. He returned to his apartment and rummaged through a drawer in the kitchen before pulling out a ball of twine with a needle already attached. He walked slowly around the living room, examining the floor. Periodically, he picked up a small round button from the floor. His search became more difficult with each button he found, but he was determined to find them all. He searched the entire floor for the last missing button, but found nothing. Until he lifted the sofa cushions. He not only found a button, but also a bag with the taste of instant ramen. He left it for later. You never know when you'll get a defective box of ramen without any seasonings, he reasoned. After he put the pillows back in place, he sat down next to the blouse again and started his work. He learned to sew when he was younger and finally found a way to use his skill. The process was repeated until the last button was buttoned. He lifted his blouse high, looking for any other flaws, while evaluating his work. While he was studying it carefully, the bathroom door opened and steam floated through the threshold. Naruto turned his head and saw a woman in a towel. Hey, he showed her the blouse. I sewed all the buttons. She came closer and saw what he said was true. She smiled and leaned over to kiss him on the cheek. Thanks, no problem. I'm going to check my clothes. They are probably ready to dry. In only boxers? No one will be there. I won't be there long. He got up and headed for the door. His second trip to the laundry was similar to the first, and nothing unusual happened. He went back to his apartment, where Mikoto was waiting for him. As soon as he entered his house, he was asked a question by a woman clutching a towel that stuck to her torso. Naruto, is there anything I can wear while my clothes are drying? This towel is soaked, and it's getting a little cold. Oh. Yes, I'm sorry, he replied and ran to the chest of drawers near his bed. And he opened several drawers and shuffled their contents. He returned to the woman in the white shirt and shorts. Will it do? He asked. She took them and nodded. Thank you. He pointed with his thumb at the bathroom. I'm going to take a shower. Mikoto nodded, yawning. Are you ready for bed? Definitely. I want to sleep. They went to Naruto's bed together. It was a double-sized mattress, and Mikoto was the first one to crawl inside. Uzumaki slid in after her and immediately put his arm around her waist. They lay on their sides, soaking up each other's warmth. The room was completely silent except for the sound of air circulating in their lungs. This gave them both the ability to think clearly, even though they were drowsy. Hey, Mikoto, he began in a soft voice, what's going to happen between us now? It was a short sentence, but it carried more weight for the two of them than any other. These two voluntarily crossed the border, which irreversibly changed their lives. The woman focused on the question. Took a while to answer, but eventually she answered, whatever you want. It was said quickly, as if it was hidden under the rug, out of sight. Is that all I want it to be? Naruto's head, which was already close to the woman's head, rose to look at her. His breath tickled her neck, making her muscles tense. His warm exhalations traveled down her pale neck only to stop and descend on her small ear. From the noise and the heat, she could tell that he was almost touching her head with his. Mikoto's breath caught when his mouth touched her earlobe. He pulled it with his teeth, but didn't stay there for long. A soft moan escaped her as he released her ear and kissed her neck. When he got to the curve of her neck, he pulled away from her, laughing through his nose. Mikoto, excited after the ordeal, turned her head to look at his smiling face. That's a pretty attractive answer, Miko. But not the one I wanted to hear. I want to know what will happen between us now. In the almost pitch darkness of the room, the two looked at each other. Not a word was spoken, but Naruto could see the thoughts flashing in the eyes of the one below him. With every second Naruto saw how every thought that came into the woman's head changed her mood for the worse. He was a little worried himself. I'd like to. Her words were barely audible, but that's impossible. Naruto's eyebrows furrowed and he tilted his head. He grabbed her shoulder to tilt her body towards him. He wanted to meet her face to face again, but her gaze remained fixed on the emptiness of the room around them. Even though she was looking the other way, Naruto knew she was listening. What do you mean? Nothing is impossible. Mikoto's charcoal eyes met with loving blue eyes again. I want to love and family. Naruto's face was distorted with surprise and confusion. I want to wake up on the same bed with a loved one. Her hand lightly stroked Naruto's hand. I want my son to be a happy person, and not the lonely workaholic he has become. I want him to love life and feel comfortable enough to trust me and others. He's carrying his burden alone, but doesn't he know that I'm here for him? I need him to trust me again. I want to wake up every day and enjoy life. There was a smile on her face, but there were tears in her eyes. Naruto stared at her with mild surprise, perceiving her words. She missed the days when she had everything. Naruto could understand her longing. He wanted a family as much as the Uchiha next to him. He also forgot about Sasuke, forgot about helping him. His friend was an integral part of his original plan to help Mikoto. Mikoto, we will have a strong and loving family. She shook her head, and the tears that were in her eyes began to flow freely. But you can't. You can't waste your youth for me. You have so much more ahead of you. You're young and I am. Naruto shook his head after each of her suggestions. This time he doesn't agree with the woman. I want to do this, because... His thoughts went back to the past, to all the time they had spent together. He has so many good memories with her, and he wanted to stay with her, because I love you. It's not a waste of my life, I want to be with the one I love. The onyx eyes widened in the dark room, and the rest of the woman's face was trained and motionless, showing extreme surprise. Tell me, say it again. Her voice was laced with disbelief. I love you. The man couldn't finish the sentence, because he felt the woman's lips. Mikoto grabbed his head with her hands and dragged him down. When they pulled away, the woman spoke first. I love you too. A huge smile split the blonde man's face. The woman had the same happy smile on her face. Naruto fell on his side and again put his hand on the body of his beloved. This time his embrace was tighter. Mikoto didn't mind in the least. Not a word was spoken for a few moments, but the two communicated through their embrace. After a while, Naruto spoke again in a whisper. There was no trepidation in the quiet voice, only confidence and determination. I will make you the happiest woman, and we will have a strong and loving family. This is the promise of my whole life. He felt Uchiha's fingers intertwined with his own. This was followed by a gentle squeeze. You have no idea how much this means to me. The couple closed their eyes and fell asleep to the rhythm of full, beating hearts. A hoarse yawn broke the silence of the dim room. Its inhabitants were slowly waking up to meet the new day. Naruto grunted as his hands reached into the air and tried to touch the ceiling. He stretched his elbows hard to drive away the stiffness. When he was done with his hands, he sat down, turned his back and sighed with satisfaction when he heard the satisfying crackling. The actions quickly woke up his bedmate. She also stretched and twisted to help herself wake up. She arched her back and stretched out on the bed. The head covered with black hair stopped right on Naruto's thigh, and he grinned. His hand reached out to her, and he ran his fingers through her dark curls. His fingers stroked her head, and she lifted her head to look into his sky-blue eyes. The man could see the bright smile that graced her face. He bent down to kiss her. It was a little awkward when one of them was upside down, but no one complained or cared about it. She grunted approvingly as his fingers massaged her scalp. "Good morning, my love." Naruto has never said this before. The way Mikoto's lip stretched after hearing his words made him understand that she was also glad that he said it. "Good morning." She beamed. She rolled her body from her back to her stomach, which forced her to settle between the legs of the blonde. "You're in a great mood, huh?" She smiled all over her mouth, and Naruto was sure that he was the first person who saw such a smile. "Uchiha, this smile looks great on you." If it were possible, the mouth of the black-haired beauty would stretch even more with joy. "And it's all because of you," she said gratefully. She leaned even closer to bring their lips closer together. Naruto's tongue pressed against her lips, and she opened them in response. Goosebumps ran down the backs of both participants. Their faces were practically glued together, and they used the connection to thoroughly examine each other's mouths. When they finally broke away from each other, their faces were noticeably flushed. Their half-closed eyes stared at each other for a moment before Naruto's gaze lowered to look at his woman's swollen and moist lips. Because of the tilt of her body, the blonde's gaze could easily move from her mouth to her chest, which they did. Mikoto's shirt, which actually belonged to Naruto, was too big for her female physique, and the garment hung down to such an extent that it revealed to everyone a clear as day view of her breasts. Uzumaki was the only person who witnessed this spectacle. His eyes stopped on the mounds as soon as his male brain realized what it was. He studied them more than any mission report he had ever read. It was the first time he had seen them without a single inch of fabric covering them, so needless to say, he was delighted. They were big. Her pink nipples were hard. However, this did not prevent the tempting breasts from arousing him. His entire observation was completed in less than a few seconds, but the woman in the center of his attention instantly noticed the lack of eye contact. She followed the trajectory of his gaze and looked low enough to bury her chin in his collarbone. The matriarch raised her head and saw that the blonde was now looking at her. To emphasize her breasts, she squeezed them between her hands. She bit her lip seductively. "Do you like them?" Her answer was that he was nodding stupidly. She was thrilled to see how much a man admired her body. She gasped in surprise. "Oh. You really like them?" Mikoto exclaimed. She lowered herself to lie on her stomach again, right between the blonde man's legs. Her hands were on both of his thighs, and her head was inches from his groin. Naruto's eyes widened in anticipation. Uchiha raised her right hand and slowly moved it to the closed organ. One finger tapped lightly on its tip, but it was enough for the man to start breathing a little harder. She noticed it, and a predatory grin appeared on her face. With every movement she made, with every touch, she watched his face transform into different states of arousal. She could feel him, hard as steel, pulsing in her palm. Inspired by how she was able to excite him, she decided to go further, giving him pleasure. The hem of his boxers. "Let's see what we can do about it." With a slow jerk, Mikoto was able to pull off her lover's boxers and release his penis. When all the clothes were put in the basket, he took it and left. As soon as Naruto took the first step up the wooden stairs, he heard a familiar voice behind him calling his name. He stopped halfway and lowered his head. "Oh, gods, no," he whispered to himself. The voice called again, this time louder and more openly. Gathering his courage, he slowly turned to face the source. There was a smile on his face and forced happiness in his voice. "Hi, Sakura. Glad to see you." It was a lie. She couldn't have chosen another time to show up. "Where have you been?" "What is it?" she asked, crossing her arms over her chest. He gave a thumbs up behind him. "Here." He calmly continued to climb the stairs. Sakura followed him, continuing her interrogation. "Really?" Tsunade said that when she sent someone for you, no one answered. I was fast asleep. I probably didn't hear the knock. You know you're on duty, right? He nodded slightly. They were standing on the landing in front of his apartment door. Yes, I know. I know. And we have a mission, as I understand it. Yes. This is a mission, got it. I'll be there. See you soon. His answers were short and direct. He expected her to leave him, but she stood there as if waiting for him to invite her inside. He turned to his door. The basket in his right hand was passed to his left so that he could grab the key hidden in his pocket. This brought the basket closer to the sight of Sakura, who was lazily examining its contents. The key had just clicked in the lock when a short sigh startled Naruto. He turned his head to find a teammate with his eyes wide open, and his heartbeat quickened. What? He asked. Sakura's eyes looked down at his limp hand. Naruto looked at the basket and looked at the clothes. On top of the messy pile were two things he wanted to hide. Whose are these? A weak finger pointed at the black lace underwear. Me. Naruto's mind raced in search of an excuse. You invited a girl? He almost admitted that there was a woman in his house, but in his panic state, he decided that it was best to deny everything. No. He mentally slapped himself. What else could he say to explain it? Then why do you need them? His mind was disconnected and could not answer. Unfortunately for the man, Sakura came up with her own answer. She withdrew her hand with an expression of disgust on her face. You stole them. The accusation was ridiculous, but Naruto did nothing to help his situation. What? No. He intervened, but his voice was lost in her loud accusation. I didn't steal them. Then why are they here? Her eyes were white with blinding rage. Sakura's anger instantly evaporated when she heard an unexpected third voice joining the fight. She turned her head sharply towards the source of the words and saw a black-haired woman who was wearing the same bra that she assumed Naruto had stolen. Who are you? Sakura asked. She was not immediately answered. Instead, the woman approached the blonde and helped him up, looking at him. I'm his girlfriend, it was said in a sweet voice, but there was a slightly hostile tone in it. Sakura's confidence decreased. Really? The answer confused Sakura, silencing her with surprise. The idea that Naruto could have a relationship with someone was alien to his former teammate. She examined the woman with a questioning expression on her face. Yes, Naruto confirmed. Can you leave now? I have to take care of a few things. It won't take long. Sakura suddenly obeyed the man and went outside to go down the stairs, muttering incoherently at the same time. She would have closed the door when she left. When Naruto could no longer feel her, he exhaled and turned to face his new girlfriend. I don't think she has the slightest idea who you are. But I was called on a mission, so I will be away for a while. Mikoto nodded. Fully dressed, the couple left in the same way as Sakura. Naruto looked back at the broken door and made a thoughtful clicking sound with his tongue, slowly shaking his head. The owner will be angry, he said before turning around and continuing on his way to the Uchiha settlement. They were at the entrance to the house. They hugged when their time together was coming to an end. Take care of yourself, she said, putting her hand on his heart. He lowered his head to get a better look at her. Okay. I'll see you as soon as I get back. I'm looking forward to it. She looked at him with a grin. We can start where we left off. He smiled back and leaned over. When they pulled away, Naruto hugged her for a second before letting her go completely. The two stood a step apart. Neither of them wanted or knew how to say goodbye. The man was forced to say something to end their communication, which he did. I love you too. He raised his hand to wave goodbye. Shortly after his reluctant departure from the woman, Naruto reached the entrance to the Hokage Tower. When he landed on his feet and opened the big door, he noticed Sakura standing. She noticed him too, and it turned out that she was waiting for him. Her hand waved, and the man responded to the gesture. Her former teammate approached her and they headed for the stairs. So, what's her name? Naruto shot her a sidelong glance. Who? She snorted and shook her head. The man knew exactly who she was referring to, but he was stalling to come up with an assumed name. That girl. Who else? Narumi? This is a unique name. Naruto nodded in agreement. She is beautiful, but she is clearly older than you. Do you know how old she is? I have no idea. You didn't ask? Her response was a strong and quick shake of her head. You said yourself not to ask a lady their age. Sakura was going to answer that, but decided to ask more questions instead. Where did you two meet? Bar really? You don't go there often, if at all. When did you meet? A few weeks ago. In fact, half a year has passed, but the goal was disinformation. Sakura fell silent while processing the information received. Naruto reached for the door handle, turned it and opened the door. He kept it open so that the woman would enter before him. The girl with pink hair nodded and quietly said, "Thank you." He closed the door behind them and looked into the room. He was surprised, but glad to see his other former teammate M. Sorry I'm late. It was a wild night. He scratched his head. Sakura blushed from the subtext. Now she was privy to information that the others in the room weren't. Tsunade's intense gaze softened, and a small grin appeared on her face. It's okay, Hokage said. Naruto nodded to his black-haired teammate. The blonde was always glad to see Uchiha in front of him, but he was even more glad that the man in question decided not to return home before going on another mission. Thinking about this fact reminded Uzumaki of his promise to his girlfriend. A promise to change Sasuke for the better. So now that we're all here, what is this mission? Sasuke asked. How do you three like the liberation of the city? Naruto grinned at this prospect. It's been a long time since they heroically saved the townspeople. I am always ready for such missions, he answered. Sakura nodded her head in agreement, and Sasuke grunted with satisfaction. Okay. Now let's move on to the details. Tsunade began, looking at the paper in her hands. This is in the land of iron. The city of Molten Sun is forcibly occupied by a large group of rogue samurai. Naruto's eyebrows rose to his hairline, intrigued by the details. It was not so fast to get to the Iron Land. He was going to be away from the village for a considerable time. Any other questions? If there are questions, everything is in the scroll. She threw the paper into the hands of Sasuke, who hid it. I need to go home and restock before we leave, Sasuke stated before leaving the room. Naruto made a similar statement before leaving. When the two men left, only Sakura and her teacher remained. She looked around to make sure that the two men had long since left before she turned to her teacher. Tsunade-sama, she began, I'd like to talk to you about something. They left as quickly as they came and went home. Everyone was impatient to return to the village. All for different reasons. Instead of covering the distance for 2 whole days, the group overcame it in a day and a half. The sun was high in the sky when the familiar walls came into view. Passing by, Naruto waved to the guards at the gate, and they waved back. The Hokage Tower was their next destination. Tsunade was glad to see that they returned unharmed. She knew these three from the time when they were geniuses and especially became attached to them. She worried about them whenever they went on a mission, but she was also confident in their abilities. How was it there? Made snowmen? No, but we made some yellow snow. At least I did it, Naruto was joking. Tsunade made a facepalm, but Sakura stuck out her tongue in disgust. A successful mission, I understand, you bet. That's good to hear. You can bring the report later, she said and pulled out a drawer to get another mission scroll, as she had done many times before. She pointed them in Sasuke's direction, but he opened his palm in front of her. No, thank you, Lady Tsunade, But I'm taking a vacation. His statement caused raised eyebrows from everyone in the room, and Hokage looked at Naruto with the eyes of "What did you do?" The blonde man just shrugged. "Oh. Okay, Sasuke, I'll ask someone else. Come here whenever you want. Otherwise, you are all free." "Thank you," three different voices said in unison. They turned away and took a step before Tsunade suddenly jumped up again. "Wait. Except for you, Naruto." He turned around to face his Hokage again. His colleagues closed the door behind him, and the loud click of the slammed door made him extremely nervous. "What's the matter, Grandma?" "Nothing special. I just wanted to know how the mood is." "Pretty good. How do you like your apartment? Don't you want to move? Don't you want to buy a nice house in the center of Konoha? There is enough space in my apartment for me." "And the door? He should have been replaced by now." "How does the homeowner feel about the need to replace 2 doors within 1 month? He threw a storm when I told him I broke him again, but he's a good guy." "How is Kakashi?" "As far as I know, he's doing well. I haven't seen him for a long time." Naruto was starting to get confused because of the number of questions. "So you communicate more with Iruka?" "Yes. I saw him at the ramen stand shortly before I left. He's doing great." "What about Konohamaru?" "He's probably in some kind of trouble." "Okay. Good." She asked questions, and he answered them without thinking. "When was the last time you went to the theaters?" "I was there recently, and I liked the performances." "Did you eat something delicious? Besides ramen?" "Of course, I tasted the wine, and how bitter and disgusting. I've always liked sake better myself." "Has something happened in your life since you became a jounin?" "Nothing unusual has happened, but I have a cool vest." "And how did Mikoto treat you?" "Wonderful." He froze with his body erect as soon as the word left his lips. Tsunade received all the necessary information. She leaned back in her chair with a sly grin on her face. "Gotcha." Naruto swallowed. "Oh shit, there's nothing wrong with dating someone, even if it's an adult woman. However, if Sasuke finds out, it's a completely different story." Naruto shuddered and decided that he should come up with a plan in case this ever happens. "Okay, but how did you know about this?" "Well, I told you before that Mikoto and I are good friends." She got a nod. "Over the past few months she has come and visited me many times, and I have witnessed how she has gradually changed. It's amazing what you've done for her. She's happier than I've ever seen her before. Anyway, I wanted to know what happened to her, but I couldn't get a straight answer from her. She was always giggling and mumbling incoherently. I had no idea until Sakura told me that you're dating someone who looks awfully like Mikoto, and your reaction a few minutes ago confirms my theory. I should have realized earlier, without her help, that my little son really likes to brighten up people's lives." Naruto smiled and rubbed the pad of his foot on the hard floor below, like a confused child. He has not been called the son for a long time. "Go to her, my love." She had barely finished the sentence when her door swung open. Naruto went down the stairs to the lobby, where Sasuke was chatting with his secretary again. Uchiha saw a blonde man rush by and called him. He managed to get his attention at the main door, and he ran up to him. "Naruto, I forgot to tell you something when I got home." Naruto looked at Sasuke. He realized that he was unlikely to meet Mikoto today. His elated mood dropped from the realization of this, and he began to regret telling Sasuke to spend more time with his mother. He quickly dismissed the thought. Mikoto wanted it. Naruto looked at Sasuke expectantly. "Before we went on a mission, I talked to my mother about her birthday, which I missed. We decided to celebrate the birthday again. And I'd like you to join us. Last time we both enjoyed your presence. What do you say?" Inside, Naruto was thrilled to hear that he actually wouldn't have to wait as long as he thought to be reunited with his lady. However, on the outside, he was just smiling. "Sasuke," he put his hand on the man's shoulder. "I would love to." The dark-haired man shook off the blonde man's hand from his shoulder, but grinned in response. "I'm glad to hear that. Just don't be late." "Okay. Do I need to bring anything?" No, not necessarily. Got it. Thank you, Sasuke. See you then, they nodded. See you tomorrow. He raised his hand to say goodbye. Naruto responded with a gesture and opened the front door. His friend turned around to return to the secretary. As soon as he turned his back to the door, Naruto jumped out the door and triumphantly raised his fist in the air. Passers-by on the street looked at him funny, but he didn't care. ****. As always, it's delicious, Naruto said, pushing his last empty bowl of ramen aside. It clattered against an impressive pile of stacked bowls, in which only a few minutes ago, there was ramen. He reached into his pants and rummaged for his wallet, repeating his usual routine. Thank you, said Teuchi, picking up the bowls. We missed you, Naruto. I also missed you, and Ayama. He finally took out his wallet. How much? Nothing. This is my gift for you, really? Thanks, old man. He exclaimed and put the wallet back in his pocket. He will need this money elsewhere. This day is getting better, he said before getting up from the stool. He said goodbye to Teuchi and left with a full belly of ramen. Naruto was walking along the road and was thinking what to buy for him. After all, it was his girlfriend's birthday, and he was obligated to buy a gift. The question that was spinning in his head was what to give her. He stopped on the street when he saw the illuminated sign of a jewelry store to his right. Naruto understood that women like jewelry, so he decided to try it. The bell above the shop door tinkled loudly as he entered, and the lady sitting behind the counter looked at him. Hello, young man. How can I help you? She said in a sweet but dry voice. Well, it's my girlfriend's birthday, and I wanted to give her something special. The woman thought for a few seconds. Here's a better question, do you love her? Yes, he answered confidently. How much do you love her? Oh. Very strongly. You'll have to describe your feelings better. Naruto raised his hand to his chin and thought carefully. She's the only woman I've ever felt that way about. I enjoyed every second I spent with her, and I don't see my future without her. I see, she said, picking out 3 boxes from the back of her closet. Then she put them on the countertop and lined them up. She opened the first one and let the man look at it. Naruto examined him and immediately noticed the skill. The ring was engraved with tiny details, detailing a serene scene with birds flying across the sky. It was a wonderful job, and it would surely have pleased anyone who got it. It's very beautiful, but I want to look at the others, said Naruto. The woman opened the second box. Naruto admired their elegance, but they also did not meet his expectations. He shook his head. The woman hesitantly hovered over the last box. You're a ninja, right? He nodded. The box opened, and there was a high-quality necklace inside. It was made of small silver rings joined together, and on it hung metal bands in the shape of a 3-dimensional heart. The stripes were located far enough apart from each other to be able to look inside the heart, where the red gemstone was. She pulled out the necklace and handed it to him. In the same case under the necklace was a ring with a red engraving covering its circumference. She gave it to him too. The ring is included. Do you take it? Yes. Naruto added a little chakra to the ring, as he was told, and watched the red engravings glow dimly. He studied the glowing ring until he felt the warmth in his other hand. He looked at the necklace that glowed brightly, causing a beautiful red light to emanate from the jewel in the heart. Wow! This is amazing. I knew you'd like it. The red gems in each part are a special material that conducts the chakra. They were also obtained from the same stone, so they are somehow related to each other. How much does it cost? Naruto was willing to pay almost any price. Naruto whistled a cheerful tune on the way home, waving a bag of jewelry. He was in a good mood. 3 wonderful things happened to him. The afternoon sun had long since set, and the moon was shining on the street leading to his apartment complex. When he got close enough to his building, he saw that his door had indeed been replaced. He also saw something on his door shining in the moonlight. He went up the stairs, taking the stairs two at a time to take a look. When he got to his door, he realized it was paper taped to his door. He came closer to read it. Naruto Uzumaki, I'm tired of fixing everything you break. You're not allowed to live here anymore. Don't try to stay, otherwise the Konoha police will come for you. Consider it an eviction. Best regards, your landlord. Eviction? Now, instead of a fun night, he will have to think where to wait out this night. He packed late into the night, marking scrolls and sealing items. He was sitting right by the bed. When his head touched the pillow, he blacked out like a light. All the anger left him, and he turned into an insensitive, motionless figure on the mattress. When consciousness returned to him, Naruto sat up and stretched, chasing away drowsiness. He looked around the empty room, saw a pair of clothes next to him and smiled. He would see her today. Then he looked at the box filled with scrolls. His eyes darted between the two sets of items before a wide smile appeared on his face. Maybe it's all a blessing in disguise, he whispered to himself. He grabbed his clothes and went to the bathroom to get ready for his busy day soon. He cleaned himself up by taking a good shower and shaving before putting on his clothes. After dressing, the blonde examined himself in the mirror, examining his outfit. He nodded to the reflection with satisfaction and returned to his bedroom to put things in order. He sealed his bedding and tossed the scroll. The last thing was a bag, and he pulled out a box and stuffed it into his front pocket. The man looked around the room for the last time. Finding nothing that required his attention, Naruto took the cardboard box and left the bedroom for the last time. He did the same with the bathroom, living room and kitchen. When he was sure he hadn't missed anything, he went out and closed the door behind him. He went down the stairs and passed by the place where his landlord lived. He put down the box and took out his key, which he casually threw at the door. The key stuck into the wooden door like a kunai. He left quickly, not wanting to see the man's reaction. The journey time to the Uchiha area was significantly longer than usual, given that Naruto had to carry a bulky, albeit light box. He knocked on the door with his elbow, and his best friend opened it. "Hi," said Naruto. "Hello. What's in the box?" Let's do it later." Sasuke decided not to pay attention to it and stepped back and pointed to the floor right by the door. He thanked me and clapped his hands. The blonde hair was turning in all directions, looking for something. "What are you looking for?" Sasuke asked. "The birthday girl mom is in town now. But it will come after a while." "Oh, good," said Naruto, heading to the sofa. He jumped and fell back on the soft pillows. His body bounced a couple of times as he sank into the soft material. He stretched out, getting comfortable. Sasuke made his way to the kitchen and returned to his friend with 2 glasses of water. He sat down on an unoccupied pillow at the end and put 1 glass on the coffee table. "Thanks," he said, grabbing the glass. He took a sip and put it back down. Naruto looked around the room in which he, unbeknownst to the person sitting next to him, had been many times. The familiar surroundings seemed cozy, but an awkward silence hung between them. He glanced at the black-haired head in front of him. In the end, Naruto came up with something to start the conversation again. "Sasuke, did you tell her I was coming?" "Actually, I didn't do it, so, am I going to be some kind of surprise?" Naruto asked in his trademark tone. "Yes, I suppose. What are you going to do?" Sasuke looked at his friend, perfectly understanding what his tone had led to. "I think I'll surprise her." It was at least mysterious, leaving Sasuke with an interested but skeptical look. "And how do you plan to do that?" "How about hiding?" "That's surprisingly unoriginal of you." "It doesn't matter. This will work." "Got a better idea, genius?" Sasuke shrugged his shoulders. "Go, turn off the light." Sasuke looked at the blonde one more time, trying to figure out if he was really serious. He sighed dejectedly. And he went to the light switch and turned it off, before returning to the sofa. His friend was no longer in sight, and when he approached, he found him on the carpet. "What are you doing, hiding? Come down here." Uchiha fell on his stomach without enthusiasm and disappeared behind the sofa. "This is childish. Learn to have fun." "That's not my idea of fun. Or any sane person, for that matter." "Well, you'll have to." He immediately stopped talking when he heard the front door handle clink. He looked at Sasuke and raised 3 fingers next to him. Mikoto opened the door and closed it behind her. In her hands was a bag of groceries, which was the reason she was absent in the first place. She didn't expect the house to be so quiet, but she shrugged together and took off her shoes. The woman saw a box of scrolls, but decided to leave it for now and headed to the kitchen. She was startled when 2 figures suddenly jumped out from behind the sofa. "Surprise!" said the blonde. Sasuke said it too, but with much less enthusiasm. Mikoto held her hand on her chest and smiled. "Hello, boys." Naruto nudged Sasuke with his elbow and looked at him with a look of "I told you it would work." He just shook his head in mild annoyance. "Happy birthday, Mom." "Happy birthday, Mrs. Uchiha." "Thank you, you too." "Nice to see you again, Naruto." She looked into his eyes with her soft eyes. "I'm glad to see you too. How was your day?" "So far everything is fine. I just bought the last thing I needed for today." She picked up her bag. Sasuke walked up to her, took it from her hands and walked into the kitchen before signaling Naruto to approach him. He opened the bag and looked at his mother. "Then we'll figure it out for ourselves, Mom." She was glad to hear it. "Thanks again. I'm going to change into something more comfortable." With these words, she left the kitchen and entered the corridor, disappearing into her room a few moments later. Naruto looked at her back before returning to Sasuke. The handle of the kitchen knife was pointed at his face, and he grabbed it. His friend had his own. "Is that the only reason you wanted me to come? Help cook?" Uchiha has already cut and divided the ingredients into quarters for his mother's festive dinner. Not the only reason. The carrots were placed on the countertop next to Naruto, and he also started cutting. "This is the second time I have to cut things while in your house. A little more and I'll start charging for meals." "You're already getting paid." "Really? You eat what you cook, and you think that will be enough?" "Quite enough." Soon after, their conversation died down, and the only sounds were the staccato clicking of knives and the wind blowing through the open window. The third sound of the door opening joined them, and the 2 cooks turned their heads to look at the woman returning from her room. Naruto's pupils dilated when he saw her. She was wearing a bright floral dress that ended just below her knees. In her hand was a straw hat with a long brim. She sat down on one of the chairs to watch them work. Sasuke turned his attention to the stove and put the filled pot on the burner. Naruto put a few ingredients in the pot at the request of his friend, but paid more attention to the woman. "Naruto, the last time you were here, you said you were interested in gardening. Isn't it?" Unable to deny himself anymore, he turned around to see her again. "Yes." "Well, how would you like to help me? And I'll tell you how to properly take care of the garden." "I would love to." Uzumaki looked at Sasuke. "Go, I'll handle it myself." Naruto patted him on the back. "Thanks. We won't be long, honey," Mikoto said to her son, standing next to the sliding glass door, a straw hat already covering her head. Sasuke acted as if he hadn't heard it, trying to save himself from embarrassment. Naruto smiled anyway and approached Mikoto. He opened the door for her and they went out onto the porch. A bucket full of water stood at the foot of the porch stairs, and Naruto picked it up. A few more steps and they were on their way to the front yard where her plants were displayed. The curvy woman walked faster than the blonde, and she leisurely turned the corner of the house in front of him. He didn't try to catch up. He liked watching her body move in a light dress that danced with every step. As soon as he turned the corner, his head bent towards Mikoto. The sudden action yanked the bucket of water, causing some water to splash out and splatter their feet. Neither of them cared in the slightest. Naruto even dropped the bucket a moment later. All the attention was paid to the exciting kiss they shared. Uchiha's soft hands cupped his face, and Uzumaki's hands held onto her sides to pull her closer. Her hands slipped from his face behind his head, she jumped up and wrapped her legs around him. He was holding her ass. The kiss somehow deepened, the couple eagerly tried to make up for lost time. Their tongues intertwined, their hands groped for everything they could reach, and their pelvises rubbed against each other. Everything about them showed a passionate but loving desperation for each other. Mikoto took a deep breath, and her flushed cheeks matched those of her lover. "I missed you." Naruto laughed shortly and put her on the ground. "I can see that. I've missed you too, Miko." I could barely contain my excitement when you jumped out from behind the sofa. "I didn't expect to see you." "Well, he invited me to celebrate your birthday, and I couldn't refuse, it was so unexpected to see you." "He left me in the dark about your coming, I know." "Did he tell you that he decided to spend more time at home?" "Yes." "Do you have something to do with this?" He shrugged in response, but cast a shy glance in her direction. "I told you I would change him." Before he finished his sentence, his torso was lovingly squeezed in the embrace that the woman gave him. Her head rested against his chest, causing her hat to be knocked off. Naruto caught him by the edge and pressed him against her back. He responded to the hug with equal effort and emotion. "Thank you." He felt her words vibrating in his chest. "I will do anything for you. Because I love you." She looked at him. "I love you too." Naruto's head lowered again to kiss her again. Shortly after their lips met, they heard the sliding glass door move. They separated from each other, trying to hide their actions. Mikoto grabbed a watering bucket and squatted over her flowers. Naruto bent down and put his hands on his knees, trying to look like he was watching her intently. He had her hat in his hand, he threw it perfectly over her head. Sasuke turned the corner a fraction of a second later. "The soup is ready, send it before it cools down." The Uchiha called the love couple. "Wonderful," Mikoto began. "I'm already hungry." With that, they returned to the kitchen. After they finished, they retreated to the living room where the conversation flowed freely. Laughter and camaraderie filled the space until they decided to bake a cake. In the same spirit as the soup preparation process, two men served the kitchen, and a woman watched and commented from a bar stool. Following tradition, Mikoto blew out the candles and silently made a wish before they started dessert. All three were satisfied, and they moved back into the living room for another wonderful conversation. The place where Naruto decided to sit is next to the front door, and his eyes eventually moved to his box. He was immediately reminded of his housing situation. "Hey, Sasuke?" "Yes, do you remember when you asked about my box?" "Well, all my things are in these scrolls." Both Uchiha had a pause. "And why did you take them with you?" "This, funny story really. You see, I was, how should I put it, evicted." "Evicted?" Mikoto repeated. "Yes." "Perhaps the landlord was fed up with me." He scratched his cheek. "No wonder. Your eviction was only a matter of time," Sasuke reasoned. A fierce look came from the blonde man. "I don't have a place to live right now, and I was wondering if I could. Do you want to stay with us?" He asked. "Yes. If that's not a problem. Until I rent an apartment. It suits me. Although it depends on my mom." Naruto was surprised by his willingness. Both men looked at the woman in search of a decisive answer. She just smiled. "It will be great to have two boys to take care of again." Kare, all three declared. With the presence of alcohol, conversations began to seem more comical and fascinating. Sasuke was the most tired. He looked like he could fall at any second. The other two were doing well. "I'll go sleep," Sasuke said after yawning. He got up and, swaying, went to his room, leaving the two lovers alone. Moments after his door latch clicked, Mikoto pounced on the unsuspecting blonde. She straddled his legs, pinning him to the chair. Naruto looked into her hungry eyes, but a moment of clarity came to him. What if Sasuke comes back? She gave him a sultry smile. He's not coming back, don't worry about it. Sasuke is probably already fast asleep. Then she leaned forward, but immediately recoiled. Oh. She clutched her leg. What do you have in your pocket? Oh, he remembered, this is for you. He pulled out a small box. He handed her the box. She slowly lifted the lid from the base and gasped when she saw the jewelry. The necklace was removed and examined by a woman. She put it around her neck to see what it felt like. Naruto quietly slipped on the ring and sent a chakra into it. Another sigh sounded as the gemstone heart slightly lit up the dim room, filling it with a romantic red color. Happy birthday, my love, Naruto whispered in her ear. He was immediately stunned by the enthusiastic woman who started kissing his whole face. Let's go to my room, Mikoto whispered softly. That was wonderful, Naru. The gentle rustle of the rotating fan blades slicing through the air was the only discernible sound echoing through the Uchiha matriarch's bedroom. The two occupants of the room were also making noise, moving air through their lungs. They were still sound asleep, recovering from the night. Naruto was lying on his back, slightly turning his head to the left. The woman was lying on her side, the arm under her was clamped between her body and the bed, and the other arm was covering the blonde man's torso. Her left one rested between her lover's legs, which were awkwardly spread apart. It seemed like it would be an awkward position for the two of them, but sleep didn't let them worry about it. When the sun began to rise and flood the world with its bright light, the day creatures woke up to resume their lives. People woke up with them either by coincidence or because of the noisy crowing of roosters who patrolled the rural areas of the village. He slowly opened his blue eyes to look around the dim room. The thick curtains that covered the windows did their job perfectly, but light still filtered through the cracks. The blonde lazily ran his left hand over Mikoto's shoulder. He blinked several times. He watched as the fan blades overhead became clearer as he blinked. A moment later, he shifted his gaze to the sleeping woman next to him. He smiled when he saw that she was still asleep, her sweet face slightly pressed against his chest. After lying down quietly and assessing the situation, he realized that he would not be able to stay in bed for a long time. He slowly turned sideways and took Mikoto off his shoulder. Then her head was carefully placed on his pillow. The blonde slowly got out of bed and covered the woman with a blanket. He didn't want to wake her up, but he didn't want to leave her cold either. He tiptoed quickly to the door and slowly turned the handle to make as little noise as possible. The door creaked several times as he closed it, forcing him to look back at the sleeping woman each time. As soon as he closed it completely, he smiled, amused by his tactful antics. He stepped back from the door and looked out into the corridor. He quietly pulled on his pants and secured them, then stuck his head and hands through the holes in the shirt. Ready to leave, he crept up to the door as if he was behind enemy lines, making almost no noise. His hand grabbed the handle, and Sasuke looked back at the sleeping girl on the bed. Her condition hadn't changed, her face still expressed satisfaction as she slept. Sasuke let go of the pen, and his hand fell limply. He stood in silence for a few moments, his head slightly bent to the floor. There was a slight hesitation, but Uchiha returned to the bed and stood by her side. Again there was indecision, but he leaned over the bed, over her, and kissed her on the forehead. He quickly averted his flushed face, trying to catch at least some reaction from her. Seeing that she was still sound asleep, he exhaled. Then he went back to the door and this time opened it to get out. Putting on the shoes that were at the front door, he left the house and headed to his home. The sun was just beginning to rise, illuminating the dark sky. The early morning fog was also present, but began to recede as it made its way through the streets. Shiho's apartment was in the urban part of the village, but the streets were almost empty, considering it was still early. Most of the windows had no light from the interior, and many of the shops still had security bars stretched across the doors. It was possible to find a random store owner who started opening his store and preparing them for a new day. Sasuke decided not to jump on the high-rise. Instead, he walked home and thought about what had happened. He took the key out of his pocket and inserted it into the lock. With a twist and a click, he opened the door and went inside. The first thing he did was head to the bathroom. When he opened the bathroom door, he was surprised to see a mess of clothes on the floor. A dirty bathroom wasn't that uncommon, but the amount of clutter caught his attention. Then he noticed that there were both men's and women's clothes. Thinking that Naruto must have dropped the laundry basket and didn't pick it up or something, he just shrugged his shoulders. He stepped over his clothes as if they were pieces of broken glass to get to the toilet. He took a deep breath and looked at the small ventilation grate in the ceiling that buzzed above him. After he finished, he washed his hands. Splashes of water from his hands hit his face to wake him up even more. Then his wet hands ran through the hair on his head, trying to get them back at least some styling. Seeing no results, he gave up and opened the door. As he stepped out into the corridor, he heard the door to his right creak open. His head snapped around to the source of the sound, where he could see the door to his mother's room slowly opening. It opened so slowly that it was almost creepy, and this undoubtedly caused some anxiety in Sasuke. The man was watching him with unflagging curiosity when he suddenly stopped moving and Sasuke watched Naruto leave the room naked. Uchiha's eyes widened to the size of saucers when he saw the unexpected appearance of another man in the hallway. The unsuspecting blonde man closed the door and turned around, where he froze in his tracks when he saw another man. "Oh shit," the blonde man whispered to himself. His heart sank into his stomach and was beating so hard that he could hear it in his ears. The entire back half of his body suddenly turned icy, as if he was sweating. Time seemed to slow down as he looked at the fear he had been dreading for months. Their eyes remained glued to each other for what seemed like an eternity, and all this time neither of them moved a single muscle. Suddenly, both of Sasuke's fists clenched so tightly that his fingers slapped his palms. Naruto watched as Uchiha's eyes slowly switched to their unmistakable red. "I fucking knew it," he muttered before shouting, "You bastard." Naruto flinched at his harsh tone and raised his hands defensively. The terrible day finally came, and Naruto wasn't ready for it. Naruto returned to the world of the living with a long, low moan. His head was throbbing with pain. By feeling a part of his face, he could tell that the damage was already on the way to healing. The tumor was gone, and the cuts were now just bumps. He rubbed his temples with his thumb and forefinger, trying to calm the headache. It seemed to help, so he stopped massaging them and opened his eyes. At first, his vision was very blurry, either because he was sleeping or because of the damage they had received. He blinked several times, each time his vision cleared. Soon the image of the white ceiling became distinguishable, and Naruto realized that he had been moved to the sofa in the living room. Shifting his gaze from his boxers to the other end of the sofa, he saw Mikoto sitting as far away from him as possible. In an instant, he realized that she was not doing well. Her legs were pressed to her chest, and her head rested on her knees. Next to her, on the end table, were crumpled napkins. This sight made Naruto's heart contract with sadness and regret. "Mikoto," he said softly. It was a barely audible whisper, but it could certainly be heard in the dead silence of the living room. Mikoto didn't say anything in response. She remained motionless in her pose, like a statue personifying sadness. He got up from his seat to sit closer to her. She still didn't react even when he put his hand on her shoulder. He spoke again, louder this time, but still timidly. "Why did you lie to me? You said you'd be fine in the past." Naruto had heard a lot of malicious comments thrown in his direction and let them flow off his back, but the words she muttered made him feel worthless. He broke his promise. His hand slipped from her shoulder and fell beside him. His blue eyes squeezed shut, as if he was recalling a bad memory. I know. I'm such an idiot, you were unconscious." And he was covered in blood. "I was worried about you." She started to get nervous again, remembering a stressful event that she had experienced not so long ago. He raised his head to look at her, noticing how tears were beginning to appear. He wanted to put an end to it. "But I'm fine now," he said quickly, trying to calm her down. The look she gave him made him instantly regret it. She pushed him on the shoulder without much effort. "That's not the point. You promised that everything would be fine and no one would get hurt. Tell me, what were you thinking when you came up with your plan?" She paused, drawing his attention. Her face turned away and she stared straight at her lap. A few moments later, soft sounds of sobbing were heard. As before, Naruto put his hand on her shoulder to try to comfort the woman. This time, however, she immediately brushed it off. His hand trembled from the unexpected reaction. "It's going to be okay," he said. For a few moments, there was no response from the woman. "I don't want to talk anymore," she whispered. Naruto heard her, which caused a frown to appear on his face. He looked around the room awkwardly, his mind full of thoughts. He quickly got up and walked down the corridor to enter his room. 2 minutes after he entered, he left the room with his hand under his jacket. Then he went into Sasuke's room, and after a minute of being there, he came out holding one of Uchiha's crumpled shirts. Then he headed for the door. The blonde slowly walked past Mikoto and patted her on the back in passing. When his hand turned the door handle, he hesitated to open the door because he heard the sound of fabric rubbing. Turning his head slightly, he looked back and saw Mikoto looking at him. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to get him back." "You don't even know where he is, but I know where to start. I'll have to ask a friend for help." He showed a crumpled shirt clenched in his fist. "Bring my boy back, please," she whispered. "I won't come home today without him." Sasuke's dark hair fluttered in the wind, blowing over the water as he looked at the horizon. After looking at him for a few moments, Naruto fell down to sit next to Sasuke. He swung his legs over the edge, where they hung a few inches above the surface of the water. The blonde also looked at the horizon, and he had to squint at the bright reflections that shone in his eyes. "Why?" Sasuke asked in a monotone voice, his eyes glued to the water. Naruto looked at Sasuke's head, surprised that his friend had spoken first. "You know, how did this happen?" Sasuke turned his head to look at the blonde. "It's a long story. Are you sure you want to hear it? I wouldn't ask if I didn't know. I met her in a bar right after I got promoted. The details are vague. After meeting her there, I drank a lot, and I'm sure she did too. The next thing I remember, I wake up in her bed at your house. I was still a little confused by everything, and then someone knocked on the door. I didn't know it at the time, but it was you. I remember. I thought someone broke in. Anyway, I thought that would be the end of it. Just a drunken night that none of us will remember or repeat. Then you came in later and invited me to your place. That's when we met again. At first I thought she didn't recognize me, and that was fine with me. But later that night, she caught me in the kitchen and said she remembered. She told me how lonely she was. And I felt sorry for her, and I wanted to help. I decided that since you were on assignments all the time, I would be the one to spend time with her so that she wouldn't be lonely. I just stopped by from time to time and chatted with her. We talked and joked and went to watch a movie or something like that. I thought I was doing the right thing. How often did you two meet? Well, it was always during your missions, but at first it didn't happen so often. As time went on, I visited more and more until it got to the point where I was there every day. I had so much fun spending time with her that after a while I fell in love with her. Then we celebrated her birthday together, and one thing led to another. Soon after that night, I could say with certainty that I was in love with her, and I was delighted that my feelings were mutual. Then there was a trip with you and Sakura to the Land of Iron, but why keep it a secret? Why not tell me everything from the beginning? It could have been out of shame, but who knows? In the end, I was too scared to tell you. I didn't want to lose Mikoto, and I didn't want to ruin our friendship. I see, just know that I never used your mother. I love her. By how much? Sasuke asked. How much? He was talking to himself before saying, I love your mom so much that you're going to have to start calling me dad soon. Sasuke's eyes widened at his words. Do you want to marry her? That's all I want. Sasuke slowly nodded his head and turned back to look at the water. There was a pause in the conversation before Sasuke spoke again. She was telling me this morning while you were out how much you meant to her. I didn't want to believe it at the time, but now I think it's true. And I noticed how much she changed with your appearance. She's the happiest I've ever seen her. I also had a lot of fun when you were around. I'm not against your relationship, really? Naruto asked with wide and curious eyes. Sasuke nodded in response, forcing the blonde to reach out and pull the Uchiha into his arms. During the hug, he thanked the man several times before letting him go. They both stood up after the exchange, and Naruto stretched out his legs. They looked at each other for a moment before Sasuke spoke in a voice trying to imitate a child. Let's go home, Dad, Sasuke said. Don't call me that. These words made Sasuke laugh heartily, and soon Naruto joined him. When the laughter subsided, the two returned to their home. Sasuke was the one who opened the door. When she saw her son in the doorway, she immediately jumped up from the sofa and quickly walked towards him. She hugged him with enough force to make him take a step back to keep his balance. He hugged her back. The hug lasted for quite a while before she let go of her son and looked at the other man, who smiled when he saw them reunited. I told you I'd bring him home, he whispered. She buried her head in the space between his neck and shoulder, and I had no doubt, she answered. Naruto felt a slight moisture on his neck, and when Mikoto removed her head, he saw only a small amount of water around her eyes. Despite the tears, a wide smile graced her face. He brought his hands to her face and gently wiped the area around her eyes dry with his thumbs. When he finished, he kissed her on the forehead. After that, Mikoto put her arms around his neck and pulled him to her to kiss him. It was an ordinary kiss, but it still caused a reaction from Sasuke, not from outside. Sasuke said, falling on the sofa. Uzumaki and Uchiha smiled before sitting down on the sofa. There was silence in the room, and Mikoto was the first to speak. Naruto, do you remember how I mentioned that Tsunade said that I have a high libido? Yes, I remember. That's not all she told me. What else did she tell you? She took his hand in hers and guided it to touch her stomach. I'm pregnant. The eyes of both men widened in surprise. Sasuke made an indescribable sound. Naruto tore his gaze away from his hand and looked into the deep black pupils of Mikoto's eyes. And now the beautiful Mikoto in a beautiful white dress goes to the altar, where Naruto is already waiting for her in a black suit. The couple swore allegiance to each other, promised to be with each other in sorrow and happiness, illness and health. And then all the fun began. A feast for the whole world, so to speak. Alcohol flows like a river, cheerful laughter comes from everywhere, but everyone also had time to congratulate the newlyweds. Uzumaki jumped up from his seat when a scream reached his ears. His daughter's first cry. He stood right in front of the door to the operating room, trying to hear the doctor's footsteps. The same ones should notify him that he has become a father. Footsteps were heard, and the door that led to the operating room opened. 2 doctors appeared in front of the blonde man, tired but happy. Uzumaki-san, we congratulate you, the obstetrician who delivered the baby was smiling broadly. You have a healthy baby. An exact copy of you, by the way. The man even sat down from excitement, breathing heavily, trying to calm down. Feelings flooded over him like a river, and the anticipation of the first meeting with his child made him tremble. Thank you, you. The men shook hands, and then the midwife came out of the operating room with a bundle in her hands. Hold your daughter. Your baby, Naruto-san, the plump woman smiled. My child, tears welled up in the eyes of the chief doctor. His voice was trembling. I became a father. He jumped up, taking the package from the midwife's hands. Should I call your loved ones? I think they can already enter, but not for long. You will need to return it to your wife for a while. The birth turned out to be difficult, I must say, the midwife chattered. Yes. Call. I'll look in on my wife for now. Naruto was confused and didn't know what to do. Such a small lump that already has life in it. Having calmed down, the child only occasionally tossed in his arms. The blonde man came into the ward, his wife was lying on the bed. Miko. Here she is, our daughter, Uzumaki smiled. Do you want me to put it to you? Instead of answering, the former Uchiha just stretched out her hands. Tears were pouring out of her eyes too. Naruto-kun. I'm so happy, the brunette was saying. Our child, she took the baby from her husband's arms, they both looked at their daughter, touched. Say hello to this world, Narumi, that's the end of it guys.